A very warm welcome to Wesley Impact. In my thought for today, I'll be taking a look at that strong Christmas theme of the flight into Egypt. And as we head into 2014, we look at just how life can change for you in just 1 year. Today, we celebrate a person's road to recovery through our drug and alcohol programme at our Wesley Hospital in Ashfield. And we meet a guest who has his own resurrection year, former Australian Christian radio announcer Sheridan Voisey. I spoke with Sheridan during his recent tour down under, and he shares with us something about his career successes and the hidden pain of a dream unrealised. Let's take a look together. Sheridan, it's great to have you back in Australia.
Yeah, it's lovely to talk to you, Keith.
Yeah, I want to wind back to the beginning. You started in radio at quite a young age, really, weren't you?
Yes, well, I had this kind of epiphany that I was supposed to go into radio, and I would have been at that stage somewhere around the age of 21. Didn't have any interest in radio, and then I went into radio from that point on.
And you were encouraged very much. You talk about somebody, Judy, helping you a lot.
I'm glad you picked up on that. Judy Barry was this lady who every Sunday in church would come up to me and say, "Oh, I heard you this week, Sheridan, on a little Thursday afternoon show I did on a radio station that probably had about 5 listeners, and she was one of them." And she would encourage me, because most of those Thursday afternoons I'd leave the studio saying, "I am terrible at this. I never want to do this. I've got to give it up." And she would keep me going because of her encouragement.
Look, you had that dream, and I call it a dream really, of your own radio show. For a long time you held on to that dream, didn't you?
1996, I'm sitting by the Brisbane River, and I have this dream, after I've been in radio for just a couple of years, I have this dream of a radio show that would explore life, faith and culture from a Christian perspective, would be accessible to a whole range of Australians. Anybody who's interested in spiritual things. It took 10 years to come about, but it then was launched in 2006, and it was quite a ride for 5 years while I hosted it.
So let's move right into this story. Your career's flourishing, but behind the scenes, it's not a nightmare. That would be wrong to call it that, but there's a very, very different kind of reality for you, isn't there, that's happening? Tell us about that.
Well, the year 2000, so halfway in between, I guess, that 10-year dream of the radio show, another dream has burst, and that's a dream for my wife and I having a family. My wife comes into the kitchen in the year 2000, she says, "I think it's time," and I think she's right. And from that point on, like any couple, every 28 days, you're looking for signs of success. And for us, every 28 days, every month, you'd have expectation, and it was followed by disappointment. And that went on for 6 months, 7, 8, 9 months. Finally, we got some tests done, found that we would need either some sort of technological assistance or some divine miracle, because naturally we just weren't going to have a family. And the problem was predominantly on my side.
And what does that do to you as a person when you're going through that?
It does a number of things, especially when that wilderness, as we call it, that wilderness journey goes on year after year. So those results that we had 9 months afterwards, after making that decision, that just started off a 10-year journey for us of trying to start a family. And we tried special diets, we tried special supplements, we had healing prayer meetings for us where people of faith. We tried IVF for the first time in 2006. Didn't work. 2007 we looked into adoption. We went through all the process of getting assessed for that. Took about 8 months. We went and waited for 2 years for the phone call to come and pick up our child. The phone call never came. We then went and tried some last rounds of IVF before 10 years later, in 2010, calling it a day. And just at the end of that 10-year journey, we had a phone call from the IVF clinic basically telling us that we had succeeded. And then on Christmas Eve of 2010, we had another call from the clinic saying, "We are so sorry, we got it wrong. There is no baby. You haven't succeeded." And that's where our dream ended. During those 10 years, what does it do to you? It makes you feel guilty as the man, because I'm the one who's holding my wife back from having what she so deeply wants. What does it do for her? It completely starts to unravel her very being, because there's a proverb in the Bible that says, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick." And it's true. I saw her get very sick. And of course, there's the big question of identity for both of us. Who are we? Who is my wife if she cannot be a mum? Who are you?
And in this book you've written, I noticed one of the things you talk about is one thing to have a shattered dream. It's another thing to be defined by it for the rest of your life, really. And you really made the decision this wasn't going to happen. You were going to try and do something different. Now, before we talk further about the title of the book and a fresh start with Ann-Maree and the decision to move overseas, I'd like to introduce today's performer. Ann-Maree Keefe is a singer in her own right. She is very much a part of a church choir and engaged. She's also not only an artist, she's also part of a band that's well known across Australia, Sons of Korah. I hope you enjoy her compilation, which is called Rest in Me.
Troubles spread, your worried mind, tired eyes stray, then you're flying blind. Up ahead, the road gets rough. I'll be there when you've had enough, 'cause the world will shake when you stand on shifting ground and you're holding up the weight, but your feet are sinking down. The Lord is easier when you let it go, when you know it's me you want, then it's me you'll know. And finally you'll find my arms, a comfort that you need, when you choose to find your rest in me. Don't you know? Can't you see? You're my own, you mean the world to me. Anything you go through will only bring the best I have for you, 'cause the world will always shake when you stand on shifting ground and you're holding up the weight, but your feet are sinking down. The Lord is easier when you let it go, when you know it's me you want, then it's me you'll know. And finally you'll find my arms, the comfort that you need, when you choose to find your rest in me. The Lord is easier when you let it go, when you know it's me you want, then my peace you'll know. And finally you'll find my arms, the comfort that you need, when you choose to find your rest in me. It's easy when you find your rest in me.
Keith Garner's new book, A Word for the World, is now available. Dealing with the 4 themes of success, sorrow, society and spirituality, the 16 sermons in this book will definitely inspire and challenge you as you read. The book also includes a DVD featuring interviews with Nick Farr-Jones, Lee Hatcher, Tanya Plibersek and Margaret Somerville. For more information on A Word for the World, please contact us on 9263 5555 or at impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
So if you'd like to know more about Ann-Maree's music, her details are going to be online all throughout this week. So Sheridan, look, what reservations do you have about sharing this story? You must have thought about it hard, before you actually put pen to paper.
You would know of a man named Adrian Plass, great British author, writer, humorist. It was his idea when he suggested that we should actually write the book, write our story of our resurrection year starting again after the death of this dream of having a child. I didn't want to do it at all, and I really didn't think that my wife Maren was going to be open to the idea because it is a very personal story. We prayed about it, and it turned out that Maren felt that it was the right thing to do, and so that's when I actually wrote the book. It wouldn't have happened if she hadn't been in agreement. After making that decision, the decision was made. This would be an honest book. And so Resurrection Year can be actually quite vulnerable in places where we share our deepest emotions, our questions about God and why he's not coming through for us. And that's actually what people are actually thanking us for, that it's kind of a real thing. But it was a hard thing to write, Keith, I really have to say.
I think you actually say something along the line, it was nearly as bad as the actual experience itself, to reflect upon it.
I had 2 weeks of reading through 10 years of journals, because I'd kind of scribbled things like that. 2 weeks of reading through 10 years of journals. Maren would come home from her new job in Oxford, and she would find me halfway through maybe a good period of our lives, and I'd be really happy. Other days she'd come back and I'd be right in the midst of the darkness. And I was reliving it again. It was tough.
So why did you go to the UK?
Maren wanted to become a mum. That dream was not going to be fulfilled. The only other thing she'd ever wanted to do with her life was to live and work overseas. And she was going to have one dream vanquished. This was an opportunity to give her a dream that was to be fulfilled. It was a tough one because it meant that the 10-year dream for me with my career and ministry and things actually had to be let go of to go overseas. But it was the right time and it was the right decision. We looked at going to Switzerland. The visas weren't going to come through for Switzerland. Then Maren has this interview with a university in England, and she then gets an email from the interview panel, and they say, "We'd like to offer you the position of medical statistician at the Centre for Statistics in Medicine at Oxford University," one of the greatest universities in the world. We didn't see that coming, and so we saw that as the guidance to go over and start again in the UK. That's how we got to the UK.
And what have you been doing during that time?
It's like I leave the wilderness too and enter a new wilderness, because who wants to speak to a guy who's a broadcaster and he's an Australian? The BBC radio stations don't call me back. I talk to publishers about new book projects. They all turn me down because I haven't got any platform or profile over there. So it's a tough time, actually, Keith. I start to wonder what my life is to be about. And it's just after that Adrian Plass suggests maybe I should write my story, and then surprise, surprise, the biggest Christian publisher in the US picks it up.
You said you felt a real grace in writing the book that was unique. What was unique about it?
I'd written other books before, and they had been hard work. Writing is always hard work. There was just some sort of flow with this book. That's the only way I can put it. And it feels as if it was kind of the book that was meant to be.
What would be the message that you would want people who read it to get?
Yes. Let me bring it down to 2 or 3. Certainly the one that you reiterated just before. The greater tragedy is to let your life completely be defined by a broken dream. And most of us have met people who they're stuck 2 decades ago when the dream died, and they've never been able to move on. You have to be able to move on, and to be able to move on, you have to actually draw a line, put the dream to bed, maybe let the dream die, if I can put it that forcefully, so that you can grieve properly and move on. That's the biggest thing I would suggest. Number 2 would be, after the wilderness years, after the difficult years, there is a new beginning. You can start again. Number 3, I would also say, is that while God doesn't answer every prayer with a miracle, we'd like him to, he can often answer a few of those prayers with a surprise, and that's what we've found. And number 4, I would say, if you're a person of faith, and even if you're not and you're just interested in looking at these kinds of things, there is an opportunity for you to see God take your broken dream, take your pain, take your suffering, and maybe not remove it from you, maybe not heal it, maybe not fix it, but recycle it and turn it into a blessing to others.
Thank you ever so much for sharing with us what for you was a resurrection year, and obviously from that now a bright future. May God bless you and your dear wife and your future jobs and life in England.
Thanks so much, Keith.
It's been 200 years since the first Methodists met in Australia. To celebrate 2 centuries of faith and pioneering care, CEO and presenter Reverend Dr. Keith Garner takes us back to where it all began.
But we don't begin here at the heart of London. We begin in a town in the north of England.
In this fascinating narrative, Reverend Garner chronicles the history of the life and times of the founder of Methodism, John Wesley. This fresh and thought-provoking documentary takes us on a journey throughout the United Kingdom, beginning in John Wesley's hometown of Epworth.
John Wesley was born here on the 17th of June 1703.
This one-hour DVD travels onto his education years and beginnings of social justice in Oxford, to his final years in London. For more information on John Wesley, the man and his mission, call 02 9263 5555 or email us at impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
Now, broken dreams are not singular. They come in many different kinds of packages. At Wesley Mission, we work hard to help people pick up the pieces and start afresh with a new outlook. Let's take a look together at our drug and alcohol programmes as Wesley Hospital are changing lives. And in particular, we'll look at Peter's story.
I was 43 when I decided that I wanted help, but it wasn't until got into the program here at Wesley, and it really took off. It really became a problem when I was about 23. Once I made the decision, I would drink from morning till night. If possible, I would take holidays to do that. Then there would be periods of where that wouldn't happen. It would just be drinking from afternoon till morning and repeating the process every day. I couldn't go to work. I would keep a bottle of booze beside my bed like a bottle of water. I would just wake up, take a drink, have a smoke, pass out. I had a special connection with this horse. I had him since he was a foal while he was still on his mother, and we had a special bond developing. It was that special that I could ride him totally blindfolded. He was a stallion, and through my drinking, I didn't put him away one night, and one of my mares came into season, and he jumped the fence, tore a big hole in his stomach, and he died. And I felt it necessary to cover that up. My experience here has been one of growth. It has allowed me to be myself. Life is so fantastic now. I'm becoming a AIN, like an assistant in nursing.
Hi Sam.
Hi Karen.
I have Peter with me today who's doing training. Would you mind if I explain the blood pressure procedure?
Sure.
That's okay?
Yeah.
I feel I've got something to offer. Give people some hope, let them know that there's a choice, that they can make choices now, and life doesn't need to be like it was for me in addiction, and it doesn't need to be like that for them as well.
Pete's incredible. His personal growth has been huge to watch, and his story is full of hope.
He's living proof that, miracles do happen. It just starts with the 21 to 28 day program here. That's just the start. The real recovery is in our aftercare, and I think that's where, we are quite different in what we offer. It's a real miracle to see people get well.
This is a journey that you don't want to miss. It's a fantastic journey, like the journey of recovery, being in recovery. I recommend it.
Christmas, of course, begins on Christmas Day, and it's the days and weeks afterwards when we really should be celebrating that Christmas theme. But today's theme doesn't easily fit in with the modern Christmas. There are features of it that certainly don't fit into the Christmas story, but they do resonate with the reality of the world around us. So I'm going to read the tough verses, if you like, of Matthew chapter 2 and verses 13 through to 18. When they'd gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said. "Take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I call my son." When Herod realized that he'd been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious. and gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he'd learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning. Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. Mary, Joseph and Jesus flee into Egypt to escape the jealous wrath of a king. They journey to Egypt, a troubled place in the world today, but we must remind ourselves it was a place of refuge for Jesus. You see, Christmas is the story of God's love brought into the world. It's an account that is a reminder that it was not received by all, and Herod to some extent encapsulates the opposition to that love which came into the world. The gentle love of God in a child is in sharp contrast to a cruel tyrant. Christmas is so often focusing on homes, and all across Australia at Christmas time people make journeys to be with their families. For some families it's the only time of the year they actually manage to get together. But we have a journey here. Once again, Joseph features as he's visited by an angel, which underlines the initiative of God in the events. Let me just commend 2 or 3 things to you. Firstly, the event is likely to have occurred a couple of years after the birth of Jesus. So though it's on all our Christmas cards, there is obviously a time lag between those first days of the birth of Jesus Christ and this event as it sits in our Bibles. And it speaks of the real context of Jesus' birth, the vulnerability of the God-child who comes into the world, that's open, that is opposed, which knows what it is to be in that place. And you know, something else, jealousy is very powerful, and it's very dangerous when it's let loose. And Herod was, of course, very jealous of anybody who in any way came up against him or tried to compete with him or expressed any kind of authority. And the flight into Egypt and what we tragically call the slaughter of the innocents sits uneasily with our Christmas celebrations. But I like to think that we should spend some time in thinking about it because it brings a touch of reality into a story which many people ignore. This world is often hostile, cruel and unjust. God's protection and loving parents are a powerful message. But the cruelty of human sin will play itself out. This is really, if you like, encapsulating the opposition to Jesus that will continue all through his ministry. The fact that he will have to deal with evil and hurt. And the love of God that comes into the world is always played out against that bigger canvas of rejection, cruelty and hurt. It's a really powerful story, isn't it? And it's one that reminds me, without any doubt at all, that Jesus Christ came into the real world. Not a pretend world of Christmas baubles, but a real world where there is hurt, where there is hate, but most of all, where there can still be that love that triumphs and that grace that reaches out to human beings. When Jesus grows up, he will grow up and continue to have to face that opposition. And that journey will lead all the way to the cross. And so at Christmas time, in this account, perhaps above all others, we have that link between him coming into the world and him laying down his life for each one of us.
If you would like to know more about today's topic or for more on Keith's message, contact Keith by writing to Wesley Mission, Post Office Box A5555, Sydney South 1235. Or email impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
I hope you're having a wonderful Christmas season, so thank you for joining us. It's so hard when our hopes and dreams aren't realised, and when despite all our heartfelt effort, we come to the conclusion that there's no promised land in the end. Just like Sheridan shared with us today, God is always there with us, even in the midst of a broken dream. We can know for certain the love of God. We leave you with a song by Steve McPherson singing, I Surrender All. So until next week, goodbye and God bless you.
To Jesus Jesus, I surrender all. To Him I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him in His presence daily live. I surrender